The bullet wasn't meant for her. It was meant for the heirs to the Moretti empire. 2 6-year-olds clutching ice cream cones on a sunny Tuesday. But when the crack of the sniper rifle echoed off the marble pillars of Central Park, Serafina didn't scream. She didn't run. She moved. In that split second, the invisible girl the nanny Axel Moretti barely looked at became the only shield between his children and death. As her blood stained the pristine white pavement, the most feared man in New York realized too late he hadn't just hired a nanny. He had been ignoring an angel who was willing to die for sins she didn't commit. Axel Moretti checked his Rolex Submariner for the 3rd time in a minute. The dial read 2:14 p.m. He was exactly 6 minutes late for a meeting with the commission, and yet here he was, standing near the Alice in Wonderland statue in Central Park, watching his twin children, Damien and Mia, argue over which flavor of gelato was superior. "Pistachio is gross, Damien," Mia announced, her voice high and authoritative, much like her late mother's. "It's green. Green is for monsters. I like monsters," Damien retorted, wiping a sticky hand on his tailored navy shorts. Axel sighed his hand instinctively, brushing the cold steel of the Sig Sauer tucked into his waistband beneath his Brioni suit jacket. He shouldn't be here. The streets were hot. There were rumors of the Calabrese family making a move on the shipping docks in Red Hook. Being out in the open, even with 4 armed guards posted at the perimeter, was a tactical error. But it was the twins' birthday, and he had promised. "Mr. Moretti." The voice was soft, almost barely audible over the park noise. Axel turned slightly. It was the nanny. Sarah, no Serafina. She was a quiet thing, 24 years old, with chestnut hair always pulled back in a severe, sensible bun. She wore baggy clothes that hid her figure, blending into the background so effectively that Axel often forgot she was in the room. She had been with them for 6 months, efficient and silent. "What is it?" Axel asked, his tone clipped. He was already typing a text to his consigliere Silas. "I think we should leave, sir," Serafina said. Her eyes weren't on him. They were scanning the tree line to the east near the boathouse. "The birds." Axel looked up, frowning. "The birds. They stopped singing over there, all at once." Axel paused. He was a predator, raised in a world of violence, and he knew that silence was often louder than a gunshot. He looked at Serafina. Her posture had shifted. The submissive head-down nanny was gone. Her shoulders were squared. Her weight shifted to the balls of her feet. She looked ready. "Rocco!" Axel barked at his head of security. "Pack it up, now." Rocco nodded, tapping his earpiece. "Car in 2 minutes, boss." "No. Now." But it was 3 seconds too late. The air didn't crack. It tore open. The sound was distinct, a high-velocity suppression round. It didn't sound like a bang. It sounded like a whip crack. Axel's instincts were honed by years of survival. He dove to the left, his hand going for his weapon. But he was 5 feet away from the twins. Too far. He saw the trajectory in his mind's eye before it happened. The red mist, the scream. But the mist didn't come from Damien. Serafina moved with a speed that defied physics. She didn't dive for cover. She dove into the line of fire. She tackled both children, her small frame curling around them like a protective shell, twisting her back toward the source of the shot. Thwack! The sound of the bullet hitting flesh was sickeningly wet. Serafina's body jerked violently, but she didn't let go. She slammed into the pavement, skidding on the concrete, her arms locked tight around Damien and Mia. "Get down!" Axel roared, firing 3 shots blindly toward the tree line to suppress the shooter. Panic erupted in the park. Screams, people running. Rocco and the other guards swarmed, forming a human wall around Axel and the pile of bodies on the ground. "Secure the perimeter. I want that shooter alive," Axel screamed, his voice raw. He holstered his gun and dropped to his knees, crawling toward the twins. "Daddy!" Maya was screaming, terrified. "Daddy, she won't let go!" Axel reached them. Serafina was face down, her body a rigid shield over his children. Her grey cardigan was rapidly turning a dark crimson red right between her shoulder blades. "Serafina!" Axel growled, grabbing her shoulder. "Let them go. I have them." Her eyes fluttered open. They were a startling shade of green, something he had never noticed because she never looked him in the eye. Her face was pale beads of sweat instantly forming on her forehead. Are they okay?" She wheezed, blood bubbling at the corner of her mouth. "They're fine," Axel said, his voice shaking for the first time in a decade. He looked at the wound. It was bad. Center mass. Lung shot, maybe worse. "You're hit." "Good," she whispered, her grip finally relaxing just enough for Axel to pull a sobbing Damien and Mia out from under her. "Good." She collapsed completely against the concrete. Axel stared at her. He had treated her like furniture. He paid her a salary, nodded at her in the hallways, and complained when the coffee wasn't hot. And she had just taken a bullet meant for his son's heart. "Medic!" Axel roared, scooping Serafina up in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile. "Get the car. We aren't waiting for an ambulance." He looked down at the woman, bleeding out on his bespoke suit. For the first time, he saw her. Really saw her. And the rage that ignited in his chest was hot enough to burn the city to the ground. Jude's hospital wasn't just a medical facility. The entire East Wing was funded by the Moretti family. It was Axel's fortress when the streets got too loud. Within 20 minutes of the shooting, the hospital was on lockdown. Private security contractors with assault rifles stood at every entrance. The NYPD was outside furious, but held back by the political machinery Axel controlled. Axel stood outside the operating theater, his white shirt ruined stiff with drying blood that wasn't his. He hadn't washed his hands. He wanted the blood there. He wanted to remember the smell of it. "Boss." Silas, his consigliere, walked down the sterile hallway. Silas was a calm man, bespectacled and sharp-looking, more like an accountant than the man who ordered hits for the Moretti crime family. "The twins?" Axel asked, his voice low and dangerous. "At the safe house in the Hamptons. My wife is with them. They're shaken, but physically unharmed. Not a scratch on them, Axel. She took the whole impact." Axel nodded, his jaw tight. "And the shooter? Rocco's boys found him, or what was left of him. He didn't make it out of the park. It was a freelancer. No ID filed off, serial numbers on the rifle. Standard disposable asset. Who sent him? We're working on it. But Axel, we found something else." Silas hesitated, holding out a manila folder. When the doctors cut off the girl's clothes to operate, they found this taped to her ribs. Axel took the folder. Inside was a photocopy of a picture. It was a photo of a small plastic bag containing a passport and a key. "What is this?" "We ran her prints while she was under," Silas said quietly. "Serafina Hale isn't just a nanny from Ohio, like her resume says. Her real name is Serafina Rossi. She's the estranged daughter of Carlo Rossi." Axel froze. The air in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. Carlo Rossi, the man who had been the Moretti family's accountant 20 years ago, until he stole $10 million and vanished off the face of the earth. Axel's father had put a $5 million bounty on Rossi's head. He was supposed to be dead. "She's a Rossi," Axel whispered. The realization hit him like a physical blow. "She infiltrated my house." "It looks that way," Silas said. "But that doesn't make sense, Axel. If she was here to hurt you or the kids for revenge, why did she jump in front of the bullet?" Axel looked through the glass window of the operating room. He could see the team of surgeons working frantically over the small, pale body. The heart monitor was beeping a frantic, uneven rhythm. She was the daughter of a traitor. By all laws of the Mafia code, she should be dead. She should have been the one pulling the trigger, or at least opening the door for the assassin. But she hadn't. She had saved the heirs to the empire that wanted her father dead. She knew. Axel realized, his eyes narrowing. She knew the birds stopped singing. She has training. Carlo might have taught her, Silas suggested. He was paranoid. Or she learned it somewhere else. Axel turned away from the window. "I want everything on her. Every school record, every credit card transaction, every phone call she's made in the last 10 years. And Silas, yes, boss, put a guard inside the operating room. If she wakes up, nobody talks to her but me. If she Axel paused, looking at his blood-stained hands. "If she burn the city until we find who pulled that trigger." The double doors at the end of the hallway burst open. A doctor in blue scrub's mask, hanging off one ear, rushed out. He looked terrified when he saw Axel. "Mr. Moretti, is she dead?" Axel asked, his voice devoid of emotion. No, sir, but she's lost a lot of blood. The bullet nicked the pulmonary artery. We've clamped it, but she's critical. She's in a coma. We found something else, sir." "Speak," Axel commanded. "She has scars, Mr. Moretti. Old ones, on her back. Whip marks, cigarette burns." The doctor swallowed hard. "Whoever this woman is, she's been tortured before. Recently." Axel felt a strange tightening in his chest. Serafina Rossi, the daughter of a thief, a quiet nanny who made terrible coffee and sang lullabies to his children in French, a woman with a body map of torture who just sacrificed herself for his family. "Stabilize her," Axel ordered. "Move her to the VIP suite. I'm not leaving this hospital until she opens her eyes." He sat down on the uncomfortable plastic chair in the hallway, the adrenaline fading, leaving only a cold, calculating resolve. The game had changed. He thought he was fighting a turf war with the Calabrese family, but this was something else. Someone had tried to kill his children, and the only person he could trust was the daughter of his enemy. Axel leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. He could still hear her whisper, "Good." She was glad she was hit instead of them. "Who are you, Serafina?" he whispered into the sterile silence. "And why are you protecting the monsters?" 3 days passed. 72 hours of beeping monitors and the smell of antiseptic that Axel Moretti despised more than anything. He hadn't left the VIP suite on the top floor of St. Jude's. He had a cot brought in, but he hadn't slept on it. He sat in the leather armchair in the corner, watching the rise and fall of Serafina's chest. Silas entered the room silently, holding a tablet. "We have the toxicology report from the shooter's autopsy. High levels of scopolamine and adrenaline. He was a junkie, Axel. Someone wound him up and pointed him at us." "And Serafina?" Axel asked, his eyes never leaving the woman in the bed. The background check is complicated, Silas said, stepping closer. Carlo Rossi died 4 years ago in a prison in Naples. But not a state prison. It was a private holding facility run by the Petrovic Bratva. Axel looked up, his dark eyes narrowing. Petrovich Russians. It gets worse. Serafina wasn't in Ohio. She was there too. For 2 years. Silas swiped the tablet screen and handed it to Axel. Axel looked at the grainy surveillance photo. It was Serafina thinner younger, wearing a maid's uniform in a lavish gilded hallway. But it wasn't a job. The look in her eyes in the photo was that of a trapped animal. The scars. Axel realized, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. They didn't just torture her. They enslaved her. She escaped 18 months ago, Silas continued. Disappeared into the wind. Surfaced here in New York with a fake ID and a nursing degree she earned online. She didn't come here to spy on you, Axel. She came here because no one, not even the Russians, would dare look for a runaway slave inside the house of the Don of New York. Axel looked back at her. She wasn't a traitor. She was a refugee. She had hidden in the lion's den to escape the wolves. A soft groan from the bed broke the silence. Axel was on his feet instantly. He moved to the bedside, his presence dominating the room. Serafina's eyelashes fluttered. She let out a sharp gasp, her hand flying instinctively to her chest, her fingers scrabbling at the bandages. "Easy," Axel commanded, catching her wrist. His grip was firm but surprisingly gentle. "You'll rip the stitches." Serafina's eyes snapped open. Panic flooded them instantly. She looked at Axel, then at the room, then back at Axel. The realization of where she was and who he was hit her. She tried to scramble backward, pushing against the mattress, ignoring the agony that must have been tearing through her chest. "Please," she rasped, her voice broken from disuse. I didn't tell them anything. Please don't." "Serafina," Axel said, his voice cutting through her panic. "Stop." "I have to go," she wheezed, tears welling in her green eyes. "If they find me here, they'll kill the children. I have to go." "Who will kill the children?" Axel demanded, leaning closer. "The Petrovics." Serafina froze. The color drained from her face, leaving her translucent. She stopped fighting and stared at him, terror replacing the panic. "You know," she whispered. "You know who I am." "I know you are Serafina Rossi," Axel said, watching her reaction carefully. "Daughter of Carlo, and I know you have scars on your back that match the work of Viktor Petrovich's favorite interrogation tools." She closed her eyes, a single tear tracking through the grime on her cheek. She stopped, struggling. She went limp, surrendering to the fate she assumed was coming. "My father didn't steal from you," she said softly, her voice trembling. "He borrowed it to pay my ransom. They took me when I was 19. He was trying to buy me back. He was going to pay you back every cent. But they killed him before he could explain." Axel felt a shockwave go through him. The narrative he had believed for 20 years, that Carlo Rossi was a greedy thief, shattered. "He died screaming my name," Serafina whispered, opening her eyes to look at the ceiling. "And now you're going to kill me. Just do it quickly. Please, don't make it hurt. I've hurt enough." Axel stared at her. He saw the resignation in her face. She expected a bullet. She expected pain, because that was all her world had given her. Slowly, deliberately, Axel released her wrist. He reached out and she flinched, squeezing her eyes shut. But he didn't strike her. He brushed a stray lock of hair away from her forehead. No one is going to kill you, Serafina, Axel said. She opened her eyes, confusion warring with fear. What? You took a bullet for my blood, Axel said, his voice solemn, almost like a vow. In my world, a life for a life. You saved my children. That makes you family. I'm a Rossi, she argued weakly. We are enemies. You were a Rossi, Axel corrected. Now you are the woman who saved the Moretti heirs. And as for the Petrovics, Axel's face hardened into a mask of cruel promise. If they want you, they have to come through me. They will, she warned, grabbing his hand with surprising strength. You don't understand, Axel. Victor is obsessed. He thinks I belong to him. He'll burn your city to get me back. Axel smirked, but there was no humor in it. It was the smile of a devil who had just found a new war to fight. Let him try, Axel said. I've been looking for a reason to expand into Brighton Beach. Suddenly the door to the room burst open. Rocco stood there, his face pale. Boss, we have a problem. Not now, Rocco. It's the news, boss. Turn on the TV. Axel grabbed the remote and flicked on the wall-mounted screen. The local news station was playing a breaking report. The headline flashed in bold red letters. Shootout in Central Park. Hero Nanny identified. The screen showed a zoomed-in high-definition photo of Serafina's face taken from a bystander's phone video just moments before the shooting. Her face was plastered across every screen in New York City. The mysterious hero who saved billionaire Axel Moretti's children has been identified as local resident Sarah Hale, the reporter droned. Serafina let out a choked sob. He sees me. He sees me. Axel swore loudly, smashing the remote against the wall. The secrecy was gone. The Petrovics didn't need to hunt for her anymore. The news just gave them her exact location. Lock it down, Axel barked at Rocco. Code red. No one in or out of this hospital without my personal authorization. Call in the heavy squad. We move her tonight. Move me, Serafina gasped, trying to sit up, wincing in pain. Where? Axel turned to her, his gaze intense. To the only place a ghost can't be found. My penthouse. The transfer was a military operation. 3 decoy ambulances left St. Jude's at midnight, screeching sirens and flashing lights, heading in 3 different directions. The press chased them like vultures. Meanwhile, a nondescript laundry van rolled out of the service bay. Inside, Serafina lay on a stretcher bolted to the floor, an IV drip swaying with the motion of the vehicle. Axel sat next to her, checking the magazine of his rifle. This is madness, she whispered. The painkillers were making her lucid but heavy. You should have left me there. I'm a target. You're my responsibility, Axel said, not looking up from his weapon. Stop talking. Save your strength. Why? She pushed her stubbornness, cutting through the fog of medication. Why are you doing this? You hated me. You never looked at me for 6 months. Axel paused. He looked at her then. In the dim red light of the van's interior, she looked ethereal, angelic. I didn't hate you, Axel admitted quietly. I didn't see you. There is a difference. I don't look at things I don't intend to own or kill. You were just there, a shadow. And now you are real, he said. And you are inconveniently brave. The van slowed down. The driver, a mute heavy named Luca, tapped the partition. We're here, boss. Private garage. They were at the Moretti Tower, a 70-story monolith of glass and steel in Tribeca. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors. It was a fortress in the sky, accessible only by a private elevator that required biometric scanning. They got her upstairs. The penthouse was cold, modern, and vast. It lacked warmth, filled with expensive art and sharp angles. Axel carried her himself to the guest suite, a room larger than the entire apartment she had been renting. "Rest," Axel ordered, placing her on the silk sheets. "Dr. Evans will be here in the morning to change your dressings. There are guards at the elevator and on the roof. You are safe." Serafina looked around the room. It was beautiful, but it felt like another cage, just a gilded one. "Axel," she called out as he turned to leave. He stopped at the door. "Thank you," she said. He didn't reply. He just closed the door. Downstairs in his study, Axel poured himself a double shot of whiskey. He downed it in one burn. His phone buzzed on the mahogany desk. It was an unknown number. Axel stared at it. Few people had this number. He answered it, putting it on speaker. "Moretti." "Mr. Moretti," a voice purred. It was thick with a Russian accent, smooth like oil over gravel. "You have something that belongs to me." Axel didn't flinch. "Viktor Petrovich, I was wondering how long it would take you to call." "The girl," Viktor said. "She is broken merchandise, Axel. She steals. She lies. Send her out the front door and we will have no quarrel. Keep her and, well, Central Park was just a warning." Axel laughed. It was a dark, menacing sound. "You missed a 6-year-old boy, Viktor. You hired an amateur. That's insulting." "I didn't order the hit on the boy," Viktor countered. "My man was aiming for the girl. Your children just got in the way. She uses them as shields." "Liar," Axel spat. "She took the bullet. You tried to kill my son to get to her." "Details," Viktor sighed. "Give her to me or I will bring the war to your doorstep. And I have friends, Axel. The Commission is not happy with you lately. They might look the other way if a certain Russian businessman removes a problem." "Come and get her," Axel challenged. "But bring a body bag. For yourself." He hung up. Axel stood by the window looking out over the glittering city. He had just declared war on the most violent criminal organization in the Eastern Hemisphere over a nanny. He walked back upstairs. He needed to check on the twins who were asleep in the room down the hall. He opened their door silently. Damien and Mia were curled up together in Damien's bed, a nightlight casting long shadows. Sitting in a chair between their bed and the door was Serafina. She had dragged herself out of her room. She was pale, sweating her hospital gown stained with fresh blood where she had pulled a stitch. In her shaking hands, she held a letter opener she must have taken from the hallway desk. She was facing the door, ready to stab anyone who came in. When she saw Axel, she didn't lower the weapon. "I heard voices," she whispered feverishly. "Is he here?" Axel's heart hammered against his ribs. She was barely standing, bleeding armed with a dull piece of metal, guarding his children against an army of killers. She wasn't just a shield. She was a lioness. Axel crossed the room in 2 strides and gently took the letter opener from her hand. "He's not here," Axel murmured, scooping her up into his arms again. "But you are bleeding again, you stubborn woman." "I promised." She mumbled, her head lolling against his chest as the adrenaline crashed. "I promised I wouldn't let the monsters get them." "I know," Axel said, carrying her back to her bed. He laid her down, but this time he didn't leave. He pulled a chair up to the side of the bed. He took his Sig Sauer out of his holster and placed it on the nightstand. "Sleep, Serafina," he commanded softly. "I'll take the watch." For the first time in years, the monster of New York was guarding an angel. But the peace wouldn't last. The next morning, the package arrived. It wasn't a bomb. It was a courier delivery cleared by security. A small velvet box. Axel opened it at the breakfast table while the twins were eating cereal. Serafina was still asleep upstairs. Inside the box was a finger, a human finger, with a distinctive ring on it. A note was tucked underneath. "The girl for the consigliere. You have 24 hours. Trade or Silas dies." Axel stared at the ring. It was Silas's wedding band. They had taken his best friend. The war had arrived. Axel Moretti stared at the severed finger resting on the velvet cushion. The ring was unmistakable, a platinum band with a simple inscription inside, "Semper Fidelis." Always faithful. It was the ring Silas had never taken off since his wife died 10 years ago. "He has Silas," Rocco said, his voice thick with suppressed rage. He stood by the door of the study, his knuckles white as he gripped his sidearm. "The coordinates for the exchange are in the box, an abandoned meat-packing plant in the Bronx. Tonight, midnight." Axel didn't scream. He didn't flip the table. He went terrifyingly still. This was the cold calculation that had made him the capo di tutti capi. "He thinks I will choose," Axel said softly. "He thinks I will weigh the life of my brother against the life of the woman who saved my children." "Boss." Rocco hesitated. "It's Silas. He's been with us since the sandbox. He knows where the bodies are buried. Literally. If Victor breaks him, Silas won't break." Axel cut him off. "But he will die if we don't act." "So we give him the girl?" Rocco asked, though he looked sick at the thought. "No." The voice came from the doorway. Axel spun around. Serafina was standing there, leaning heavily against the doorframe. She was wearing one of Axel's silk robes, which swallowed her small frame. Her face was grey sweat beading on her upper lip, but her green eyes were clear and hard. She had heard everything. "Serafina, get back to bed," Axel ordered, moving toward her. "You are bleeding." "He has your friend," she said, ignoring his command and stepping into the room. She looked at the box on the desk, flinching only slightly at the sight of the finger. "Victor doesn't make idle threats. If you don't show up with me at midnight, he will send you the rest of him in pieces." "I am not trading you," Axel growled, reaching her and gripping her arms to steady her. "We will find another way. We will storm the place." "You can't," Serafina said, her voice trembling but resolute. "The Bronx facility, I know it. Victor used it for processing before he moved us to the estate. It's a fortress, underground tunnels, reinforced steel doors. If you attack from the outside, he'll kill Silas and slip out the back before you even breach the perimeter." Axel looked at her, searching her face. "You know the layout. I know every inch of that hell," she whispered. "I know the ventilation shafts. I know where the drainage pipes empty out into the river. And I know Victor." She looked up at Axel, her gaze piercing. "He is arrogant. He thinks he has won. He thinks I am just a scared little girl." "You are injured," Axel argued. "You can barely stand." "I can stand enough to walk into a trap," she countered. "Use me, Axel. Use me as the Trojan horse." "No." "It's the only way," she shouted, then gasped, clutching her side as pain ripped through her. She sagged, and Axel caught her, pulling her against his chest. "I won't let you go back to him," Axel murmured into her hair. The scent of her vanilla and antiseptic filled his senses. I can't. Why? She asked, pulling back just enough to look at him. Because I'm an asset. Because you belong to me, now, Axel said, the possession dark and heavy in his voice. And I don't give up what is mine. The air between them crackled. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It was something primal. Then trust me, Serafina pleaded softly. I go in. I distract him. I get him to unlock the secure wing, to put me in his collection. That's when the doors open. That's when you strike. But you have to let me walk into his hands first. Axel closed his eyes, a war raging behind them. Logic dictated she was right. Emotion screamed that it was suicide. He opened his eyes. They were cold steel again. Rocco, Axel barked. Get the tactical gear, and get the blueprint team. Serafina is going to draw us a map. He looked down at the woman in his arms. If you die, Serafina, I will resurrect you just to kill you myself for disobeying orders. She offered a weak, tired smile. Deal. The next 6 hours were a blur of preparation. Serafina, fueled by adrenaline and a cocktail of painkillers Dr. Evans administered, sketched the layout of the meatpacking plant. She showed them the weak points, the blind spots in the cameras, and crucially the location of the holding cells. At 11:00 p.m., she stood in front of the mirror in the master bedroom. She was dressed in a simple black dress that concealed the Kevlar vest taped tightly to her torso. Under the dress, strapped to her inner thigh, was a ceramic knife invisible to metal detectors. In her ear, a microscopic transceiver. Axel entered the room. He was dressed for war, black tactical gear, suppressed rifle slung over his shoulder, a terrifying calm radiating off him. He walked up behind her, watching her reflection in the mirror. You don't have to do this, he said one last time. I do, she replied. He took my life for 2 years. I'm taking it back. Axel reached out his rough fingers, tracing the line of her jaw. When the shooting starts, you drop. You hit the floor and you don't move until I tell you. I know. Serafina. He turned her around to face him. His eyes searched hers. Come back to me. He didn't wait for an answer. He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, fierce tasting of danger and promise. It was a claim. When he pulled back, Serafina was breathless. Her cheeks flushed. Now, Axel whispered, pulling a black hood over his head. Let's go get our family back. The meat-packing plant loomed against the night sky like a rotting carcass. It smelled of old blood and rust. Rain had started to fall, slicking the cobblestone streets of the industrial district. A single black SUV rolled into the center of the courtyard. The headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating a group of men standing by the loading dock. In the center sat Viktor Petrovich. He was sitting on a folding chair smoking a cigar, looking like a king on a throne of filth. Beside him, 2 large men held up a figure that was barely standing. Silas. He was beaten bad. One eye was swollen shut, and his left hand was wrapped in bloody gauze. But he was alive. The SUV door opened. Axel stepped out, hands raised, showing he was unarmed. You brought her, Viktor called out, his voice echoing off the brick walls. She's here, Axel said, his voice flat. He opened the back door. Serafina stepped out into the rain. She looked small, fragile, shivering in the cold. She walked to Axel's side, keeping her head down. Excellent. Viktor grinned, standing up. Bring her to me. The consigliere is free to go once she is in my custody. Simultaneous exchange, Axel demanded. She walks, he walks. They cross in the middle. Viktor shrugged. Acceptable. He shoved Silas forward. Go cripple. Silas stumbled forward. Serafina looked at Axel. He gave a microscopic nod. She began to walk. The rain plastered her hair to her face. Every step sent a jolt of pain through her healing chest wound, but she kept her face impassive. She locked eyes with Victor, the man who had whipped her, the man who had treated her like cattle. They met in the middle of the courtyard. Silas stumbled past her, whispering through split lips, "Don't do it, kid." "Keep walking, Silas," she whispered back. She reached Victor. He reached out his hand, grabbing her chin, roughly forcing her to look at him. "There she is," Victor sneered. "My little runaway. Did you miss me?" "Go to hell, Victor," she said, her voice steady. "I own hell." He laughed. He turned to his men. "Load her up. Kill the Italian." It happened in a heartbeat. "Now!" Serafina screamed into the comms. She didn't cower. She dropped her weight, stomping on Victor's instep with her heel, and threw herself backward, rolling onto the wet concrete. Crack-thoom. The sniper shot from the adjacent rooftop. Rocco took the head off the guard, standing closest to Axel. Chaos erupted. Axel didn't dive for cover. He pulled a submachine gun from under his coat and opened fire, advancing toward Serafina. "Get down!" he roared. But Serafina wasn't staying down. She was in the lion's den, and she knew where the teeth were. As Victor stumbled back, cursing, reaching for his gold-plated desert eagle, Serafina reached under her dress. She ripped the ceramic knife free. Victor aimed at Axel. Serafina lunged. She drove the knife into Victor's thigh. He screamed a high-pitched sound that was music to her ears and backhanded her. The blow sent her skidding across the wet pavement, tearing her stitches. Pain blinded her white and hot. "Bitch!" Victor howled, clutching his leg. "Kill them all!" Bullets chewed up the concrete around her. Axel was there a second later, grabbing her by the back of her dress and dragging her behind a concrete pillar. "I told you to stay down!" Axel yelled over the roar of automatic fire. He popped out, firing 2 bursts, dropping 2 Russian enforcers. "He's running!" Serafina gasped, pointing. Victor, limping and bleeding, was retreating into the factory, dragged by 2 of his bodyguards. "Rocco, get Silas out," Axel ordered into his earpiece. "I'm going after Victor." "I'm coming with you," Serafina said, trying to stand. "No." Axel grabbed her face. "You've done enough. You're bleeding through the dress." "He knows the tunnels," she panted, her eyes wild. "If he gets to the basement, he's gone. You'll never find him. I know which door he's going for." Axel looked at the blood spreading on her side. Then he looked at the fire in her eyes. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a partner. He handed her a pistol from his belt. "Safety is off. Don't hesitate." They moved together, a deadly unit. They breached the factory doors. Inside it was a maze of hanging hooks and rusting machinery. Shadows danced as gunfire flashed from the catwalks above. "Left!" Serafina shouted, firing 2 shots at a shadow that moved. A body fell from the rafters. "Clear," Axel confirmed, moving forward. They tracked the trail of blood Victor left behind. It led to the heavy steel doors of the old freezer unit. "He's going for the sub-basement," Serafina whispered. "There is a tunnel that leads to the docks." They reached the freezer door. It was locked from the inside. "Stand back," Axel ordered. He placed a breaching charge on the handle. Boom. The door blew inward. Cold air rushed out, smelling of stale ice and death. Axel entered first, weapon raised. Serafina followed. The room was vast, filled with empty meat hooks hanging from ceiling tracks. At the far end, near an open hatch in the floor, stood Victor. He was alone. His guards had evidently been left behind to die. He held a detonator in his hand. One more step. Victor smiled, his teeth stained with blood. And this whole building comes down on top of us. I rigged the pillars. Axel froze. He lowered his weapon slightly. It's over, Victor, Axel said. You have nowhere to go. I have the final say, Victor sneered. He looked at Serafina. You think you are free. You will never be free. You are marked. You are mine. Serafina stepped out from behind Axel. She raised the gun he had given her. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the moment. I am not yours, she said, her voice echoing in the cold room. I am Serafina Rossi, and I am the last thing you will ever see. Victor's thumb twitched over the detonator button. Then we die together. Axel, shoot his hand, Serafina screamed. Axel didn't need telling. He fired. The bullet severed Victor's thumb just as he pressed down. The detonator fell to the floor, useless, but the circuit hadn't closed. Victor screamed, clutching his mangled hand. Serafina didn't wait. She walked forward. Victor looked up at her eyes wide with shock. For my father, she said. Bang! She shot him in the shoulder. For the scars on my back. Bang! She shot him in the other shoulder. Victor fell to his knees. And for threatening my family. She aimed the gun between his eyes. Axel watched her. He could stop her. He could take the gun. But he knew she needed this. This wasn't murder. It was an exorcism. Do it, Axel whispered. Serafina squeezed the trigger. Click. The gun was empty. Victor started to laugh, a gurgling, wet sound. Fate. Fate loves me. Serafina stared at the gun, then at Victor. Her eyes went cold. She dropped the useless pistol. She reached into her dress and pulled out the ceramic knife, the one she had stabbed him with earlier, which she had retrieved during the firefight. She walked up to him. Victor stopped laughing. No gun, she whispered, leaning down so her face was inches from his. Good. She didn't look away as she finished it. When Axel walked over to her, Viktor Petrovich was dead. Serafina was standing over him, shivering violently, the bloody knife slipping from her fingers. Axel holstered his weapon. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her tight against him, shielding her from the sight of what she had done. It's over, he said into the silence of the freezer. The monster is dead. Serafina buried her face in his chest, and finally, after 2 years of holding it in, she wept. She cried for her father, for her stolen life, and for the man she had just killed. Axel held her, rocking her gently, as the sirens wailed in the distance. He knew then with absolute certainty that he would burn the world down before he let anyone hurt her again. But the war wasn't quite over. As they walked out of the meat-packing plant into the rain, Rocco met them. Boss, Silas is safe. But you need to see this. Rocco held up a phone. It was a live feed from the news. Breaking Mafia war in New York. Police issue warrant for Axel Moretti. The police commissioner, a man Axel thought he owned, was on the screen. We have evidence linking Axel Moretti to the chaos tonight. We are issuing a citywide manhunt. Axel looked at Serafina. She was leaning on him, barely conscious. They're coming for us, Axel said. Where do we go? She whispered. Axel looked at the skyline. We don't run. We finish it. The rain had turned into a deluge, washing the blood of the Bronx streets into the gutters. but it couldn't wash away the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the wet pavement. New York City was closing in. "Commissioner Hayes turned on you," Rocco growled from the front seat of the SUV. He was driving fast, weaving through the traffic on the FDR Drive, heading away from the penthouse. "We can't go back to the tower. SWAT is probably rappelling down the elevator shaft right now." Axel sat in the back, holding a towel against Serafina's side. She was fading again, the adrenaline crash hitting her harder than the bullet. Her skin was clammy, her eyes losing focus. "Hayes didn't turn," Axel said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "He was bought. The Petrovics must have had dirt on him, or they paid him more than I do." "Where are we going?" Serafina whispered. Her hand was gripping Axel's lapel, so tight her knuckles were white. "We can't outrun the police, Axel. Not in New York." "We aren't running," Axel promised. "Rocco, take us to the seaport, Pier 17. "The yacht?" Rocco glanced in the rearview mirror. "Boss, that's the first place they'll look after the penthouse." "Exactly. That's why I want Hayes to find me there." Serafina looked up at him, confusion swimming in her pain-clouded gaze. "You're surrendering?" Axel brushed a wet strand of hair from her forehead. "I'm negotiating. But first I need to make a call." He pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number that hadn't been used in 5 years. "Silas," Axel said when the line connected. "Are you clear? I'm with the medic at the safe house in Queens." Silas's voice was weak but functional. "They patched me up. I'm watching the news, Axel. They're painting you as a domestic terrorist." "I know. Open the Pandora file." There was a pause on the other end. A heavy silence. "Axel," Silas warned. "If you open Pandora, there is no going back. You'll take down half the city government. Judges, senators, the commissioner. Everyone. It's the nuclear option. We use that for end-of-days scenarios." "They came for my children," Axel said, looking down at Serafina. "And they hurt my woman. It is the end of days." "Understood," Silas said. "I'm decrypting the files now. Give me 10 minutes. The SUV screeched to a halt at Pier 17. The Lady Maya Axel's 150-foot super yacht bobbed in the dark water. It was silent, dark, a ghost ship in the storm. "Rocco, get her on board. Get her to the medical bay," Axel ordered. "Where are you going?" Serafina asked, panic rising in her voice as Rocco lifted her. "I'm going to sit on the deck and wait for visitors," Axel said. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Trust me one last time, Angel." He watched Rocco carry her up the gangway. Then Axel Moretti buttoned his suit jacket, straightened his tie, and sat down on a deck chair facing the pier entrance. He lit a cigarette and waited. It took 12 minutes. 4 unmarked police cruisers tore onto the pier tires, screaming. Armed men in tactical gear, spilled out, weapons raised. Commissioner Arthur Hayes stepped out of the lead car holding a megaphone. "Axel Moretti," Hayes shouted, his voice amplified over the storm. "Step off the boat with your hands on your head. We have snipers on the roof." Axel didn't move. He took a drag of his cigarette and exhaled a plume of smoke. "Come aboard, Arthur." Axel called out, his voice not amplified, but carrying perfectly in the tense silence. "Just you, unless you want your wife to see the photos from your weekend in Atlantic City with that 18-year-old intern." Hayes froze. The megaphone lowered slightly. "You're bluffing," Hayes shouted back, though his voice wavered. Axel tapped his phone. "Check your email, Arthur. Silas just sent you a teaser, and he sent a copy to the New York Times, scheduled for release in..." Axel checked his watch. 5 minutes. I can stop the email to the press, but you have to walk up here right now. Hayes stared at his phone. His face went pale in the cruiser lights. He said something to his SWAT commander, who looked confused and angry, but Hayes waved him down. The commissioner walked up the gangway alone. He looked small, defeated. "You're insane," Hayes hissed as he reached the deck. "You can't blackmail the police, Commissioner." "I just did," Axel said, flicking his cigarette butt into the harbor. "Sit down." Hayes remained standing. "It doesn't matter. The Petrovics paid me $5 million to burn you. They have leverage on the mayor, too. You're done, Moretti." "Viktor Petrovich is dead," Axel said casually. "My nanny put 2 bullets in him about an hour ago. The Petrovic organization is currently fighting a civil war over who takes charge. They aren't paying you anything." Hayes's eyes widened. "Viktor is dead. And you're next," Axel said, standing up. He towered over the commissioner. "Unless you fix this, now." "How?" Hayes stammered. "The warrant is public. You issue a retraction. You say it was a case of mistaken identity. You say Axel Moretti was assisting the police in a sting operation to take down a Russian terror cell. You pin it all on Viktor. You make me the hero. That's impossible." "The email to the New York Times has a video file attached," Axel said coldly. "Audio of you taking the bribe. 5 seconds, Arthur." Hayes pulled out his radio. His hands were shaking. "Stand down," he barked into the mic. "All units stand down. False alarm. Repeat, false alarm." Axel smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Good choice. Now get off my boat." As Hayes retreated, scrambling back to his car with his tail between his legs, Axel felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The sirens died down. The cruisers reversed and drove away. The city was his again. Axel turned and walked into the yacht's cabin. He went straight to the medical bay. Serafina was lying on the bed, an IV in her arm. Rocco was standing guard. "It's done," Axel said. Serafina looked at him. She looked exhausted, battered but alive. "He left. He works for us now," Axel said. "Permanently." He dismissed Rocco with a nod. The guard left, closing the door. Axel sat on the edge of the bed. He looked at Serafina, really looked at her. The woman who had been a ghost in his house for 6 months was now the only thing he could see. "You need a new contract," Axel said softly. Serafina managed a weak laugh. "I think I'm fired. I put the children in danger." "You saved them," Axel corrected. "But you can't be their nanny anymore." Her face fell. "Oh, I understand. I'll pack my things once I'm healed." "You misunderstand," Axel said, reaching into his pocket. He didn't pull out a ring. He pulled out 2 passports. "These are for Damien and Mia. New names, just in case." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because," Axel said, his voice rough with emotion, "a nanny doesn't need to know where the escape passports are kept. A mother does." Serafina stopped breathing for a second. "Axel, I don't know how to do this," Axel admitted, looking vulnerable for the first time in his life. "I don't know how to be soft. But I know that when I thought you were dead in that park, I died too. And when you walked into that warehouse tonight, I knew I would burn the world to keep you safe." He took her hand. It was rough, calloused, scarred. "Marry me," Axel said. "Not for the twins, not for protection, but because you are the only person on this earth who sees me and doesn't flinch." Tears spilled over Serafina's cheeks. She squeezed his hand. "I'm broken, Axel. I have nightmares. I have scars. So do I, Axel said, lifting her hand to his lips. We'll match. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Axel leaned down and kissed her gentle and slow, a promise sealed in blood and survival. Six months later. The garden of the Moretti estate in the Hamptons was in full bloom, white roses specifically. Damien and Mia were running across the lawn chasing a golden retriever puppy named Bullet, a name Axel hated but Serafina found hilarious. Serafina sat on the veranda watching them. She wore a white sundress that showed her arms. She didn't hide the scars anymore. They were part of her story. Mrs. Moretti. She turned. Axel was standing in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. He looked different. The hard lines around his eyes had softened. He still wore the gun, of course. He was still the king of New York. But the war was over. You're home early. She smiled, taking the glass. Silas is handling the unions, Axel said, sitting beside her. He rested his hand on her knee. I wanted to see my wife. The twins are asking if we can go to Disney World. Serafina laughed. I told them to ask their father. Disney World. Axel groaned. Do you know how hard it is to get a security team into the Magic Kingdom? Figure it out, boss, she teased, leaning her head on his shoulder. Axel looked out at his children playing safely in the sun and at the woman who had saved them. He thought about the day the birds stopped singing in Central Park. It had been the worst day of his life, but it had led him here. I love you, he whispered. I know, Serafina replied, closing her eyes, content. I love you too. The invisible nanny was gone. The Queen had taken her throne, and for the first time in history, the Moretti family wasn't ruled by fear. It was ruled by an angel. And that is how Serafina Rossi went from a silent, invisible nanny to the woman who brought the New York Mafia to its knees. She proved that true power isn't about muscles or guns. It's about the courage to sacrifice everything for the people you love. Axel Moretti thought he was hiring a servant, but he ended up finding his salvation. It's a reminder that sometimes the strongest heroes are the ones we never notice until they're the only thing standing between us and the darkness. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, redemption, and romance, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And I want to hear from you. Do you think Axel was right to forgive Serafina's family history so quickly? Let me know in the comments below.